What sort of second-term president do you want Obama to become if he wins re-election? That's a great question, because I was going to talk about the drug war. There was a big story in the paper this week about the drug war. There was a commission from some flaming liberals like George Shultz. Remember George Shultz? Ooh. He's got to be 110, this guy. I mean, he was in the...
He's still on.
And you know what? He deserves a big pat on the back, because this commission basically said, I loved it, they phrased it this way. They said, politicians should do publicly what they acknowledge privately. Because I've heard so many politicians, soon as the camera's off, they will say to you, yes, the drug war is a failure, that's not the way to handle it. They said, just acknowledge what you tell us in private, publicly.
You know, in truth, more conservatives have spoken out on it.
Yeah.
Lately.
That's true.
Yeah.
And Obama opposed this, by the way.
Absolutely.
William F. Buckley.
Yeah. But anyway, to get to the point of the question,
right.
I'm hoping that this is one of those things that Obama knows he can't touch in his first term, but in his second term, he might touch something like the drug war.
Well, let me just say, he touched it a bit in the first term, which is to say that he did pass and sign legislation that equalized the crack and powder cocaine situation, which really was having an enormous, it still is, having an enormously disparate impact. So it's not as though he hasn't touched this at all, but certainly he hasn't, I mean, as the African-American president being called a non-American, and given that both crime and welfare have been so racialized since the 1980s as ideas, the idea that the black guy would come in and say, okay, you know, we're done with crime, you know, with the drug war now, it's very sort of like Nas, if I ruled the world.
But I feel,
he just can't really do that.
No, I know. But I do feel kind of bad for the guy who's rotting in prison, who heard first that Clinton can't do it because Clinton has a sex problem, so he can't be the guy who's getting blown and also wants to smoke pot, and now Obama can't be the guy, I'm black and I also can't be for pot. It's like, when can a guy come into office?
So much of this happening at the state.
Nixon could do it. That's right. Nixon could have gone to Haight-Ashbury.
The real problem is that so long as there are hack politicians who want to say 3 strikes you're out and come up with these slogans that are not thoughtful, I think we need to actually push them further. I think we need to be even worse than 3 strikes you're out. I think it has to be like charge the mound you're out, so it's only one time. I think it has to be like MMA tap out you're out, even more so.
I think you can't have one size fits all on this, because there are some people that are violent, they have violent backgrounds, and need to be treated differently. I'm totally for prevention. We know drug courts work, we know prevention works, but there are some people that are going to be recidivists, they're going to be on the street. And in fact, one of the reasons why crime has been coming down, violent crime has been coming down in America, and it's defied the odds, because as the economy deteriorates, generally you see more violent crime. People are saying, one of the studies says, is because of the fact that...
Well, we do put more people in jail than any other country.
But they're not a bunch of violent offenders. They're not violent offenders for the most part.
No, I mean,
it's mostly nonviolent drug crime.
But either we're the greatest people in the world, or we're the people who somehow put more of our people in jail. How can we still be the greatest people in the world?
We're not the greatest people in the world.
But we have
2 million in jail. We have 2 million in jail, which percentage-wise is more than China.
More than anyone.
And we also are one of the only 4 countries in the world that put children to death. And we also put learning disabled people to death, which is fucked up, if you really think about it. It
is a little fucked up.
It really is.
But it also goes to Bill's point, though. It goes to Bill's point about private industry. I mean, we've privatized it so that prisons are profit-driven. And anything that's profit-driven is going to put more people in it. Because that's how they're making their money. So what we've done is we've said, okay, if we take this whole group of people and incarcerate them, then they're not looking for work. That will drop the unemployment rate. And, by the way, all these unskilled workers who don't have jobs building bridges, we'll put them to work guarding the other guys. Right. And so downstate Illinois ends up making jobs for unskilled white workers and locking up unskilled black workers, and therefore you start creating some jobs. And so we actually have an employment issue.
There's no votes to combat alcoholism and drug abuse. You know, that's the reality.
Right.
You know, you've met the enemy, it's us.
It doesn't
who's coming out to talk about, alcoholism, even after all these years, is a plague, and people still don't want to talk about it.
And you know what? One of these studies, by the way, that's asking this question, and you're right, sociologists are baffled why the crime rate went down even in a recession, because usually it goes up. The theory was, well, people are poor, they're out of work, they have to rob you. You know what it is? They stopped putting lead in paint.
That's one
really?
Fact. Yeah.
Really?
And
that's one fact.
Kids stop eating paint chips with lead, and that makes them violent.
Yeah.
Something as simple as that.
Yeah.
Stop making kids violent.
Well,
No, I'm not kidding.
Full disclosure, I own 3 private prisons myself,
Yeah.
personally.
And you paint them with lead?
I got to tell you, we employ a lot of good people. Yes, we abuse some prisoners, but it's helping the economy.
Of course
Right.
it is.
Just think of the big picture. That's all
right,
I'm
the
saying.
big picture around it.
Yeah.
This is a question I was about to ask and we didn't get to it. Is Germany making the right choice in their decision to abandon nuclear power? This, I think, is really interesting. See, Germany, unlike this country, can gather in new information, adapt, and then change their ways. That's completely foreign to us.
Yeah.
But I think when Germany, the most technically advanced people ever,
Yes, we
you
are.
know, when they say, hey, you know what? This ain't worth it, nuclear power.
Okay, but not so cool, you know, because you know what's been happening in Germany? Coal prices have been spiking because they're thinking they're going to replace nuclear power, which is non-carbon emitting, with coal, which is highly dirty. So, you know, everyone wants to go to heaven, but they don't want to die. So they don't want nuclear power. They don't want to drill for natural gas.
But I don't
they don't
think,
want transmission lines.
I
in their
don't think
backyard.
Germany's plan is to go back to coal.
I was just actually, we're shooting a movie right now in Berlin, and I was there for 2 weeks, and it's crazy driving around that country because you see 2 things. You see giant windmills everywhere. You see solar power everywhere, and you also see factories. And we kept laughing like, oh my God, they make their own shoes here. They make their own belts.
What's that?
They didn't outsource everything. And not only that, they're a very profitable country, and they have a great sort of equal distribution of wealth. They have health care. I talked to my driver, which sounds really gross, but I talked to my driver about it, and he described how unemployment works, that if you can't get a job, you go through tier to tier to tier to find a job, and then if you can't get one, they give you $1 a day, and you clean up by the side of the road, but you get unemployment.
And they have a big government.
A big
And they
government.
have a big old government.
Fat government.
Big old ginormous government.
Yeah, they do.
But they expect
do.
people to do something.
They expect people
Who
to
won
do
the
something,
war?
which
That's the contract.
liberals are fine with that. We want to work.
I don't think that's. I don't.
No,
think that.
come on.
No, we don't.
really? Are you?
I think that's one of the areas.
on.
No. Listen, I think if that was really on the table, listen. When I was in Congress, I had in a public housing reform bill, you know, the people who were getting aid, getting help, not paying any rent at all, weren't students, weren't taking care of a parent that was sick, all these exemptions. They'd give 7 hours a month to their community, to their building, do whatever they want to. Agree to. It was a polarizing.
But here's what I want to know.
You know.
For the idle rich for whom you gave enormous tax cuts, what did they have to do
No,
for that? I mean, how many hours did they have to give?
you presume-
No, because the issue is if you are
first
rich.
claim on the
but,
money.
but if you're rich,
but you got
but my point is if you're rich, the government
The
will
government's-
underwrite your idleness.
No, but government doesn't
if
give
you
you the
are
money.
poor,
You
they
make the
will
money.
punish you for being a stay-at-home mom.
We still need the
Literally.
troops there, by the
See,
way.
I just think that
No.
presumes.
Why are our troops?
talk about that?
Government's got the first stake on the money.
You've already talked about it.
I've completely lost control. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thank you. Internet. Should Joe Biden be Obama's running mate in the next election? If not, who would you like to see on the ticket? Oh, this comes up every...
Joe Biden?
They mean Joe. They
Joe
said-
Biden. What'd I
You said
say?
Bill
I think
Biden.
said Bill Biden.
Oh, no. Sorry. Joe Biden, yes. I mean, this always, I don't know why this is always of interest to people, but I mean, they said the same thing when Cheney was the vice president. Is he going to be on the ticket again? Usually it's the same guy, but I don't know. Who else would it be?
I don't think they've changed vice presidents since like Lincoln.
Yeah.
I think he changed like.
I
twice.
mean, FDR had a few different ones, but he was.
Oh, yeah,
there for
FDR had a
long-
different
for
vice
bit-
president,
Well, but
too.
he was there forever. I mean, they were just probably dying on him. But I don't know. I mean, you know,
Seemed like a fine pair.
I'd love to
yeah.
see Hillary Clinton get in, just because it would blow the minds of right-wingers from coast to coast.
And it could
She'd
happen.
be a good vice president.
And it would be set her up better to run in the next election, and it's an easier job. I mean, she must be exhausted. The Secretary of State job is very difficult, and that
Did
could.
she say
that,
she wants to go on to the next term as Secretary of State?
no, she's
No.
she's
done.
She's
gonna
done
leave,
soon.
and she'd pretty much kill herself before she'd be
Right?
VP.
Yeah, it's very.
That doesn't,
yeah.
that doesn't stop us from speculating.
And that could have been the deal they made when she took the job to begin with. You don't know what goes.
Why
on.
would she kill herself?
She'd be
Which, I mean, I'm sure she said she didn't want to be VP. She's given the Sherman-esque denial. She said 18 different ways that don't stop guys like me speculating about it on our blogs.
What would you like? Would you like to interview Sarah Palin on Real Time or have her on the panel? Well, of course, but I can't subpoena people. What do you make of the so-called slut walks taking place around the world? Oh, do you know what slut walks are? They're a protest against people who think that when women dress provocatively that they're asking for it. And this has created an outrage. It started in Toronto, but I think there's like 75 of them around the country now where women dress scantily clad to protest being judged for dressing scantily cladly.
Well, I think
I'm in favor of them.
I think with Planned Parenthood on the chopping block, we probably have better use of our time, our feminist time, than
right.
Right. But, I mean, you can think of more things than one. It's not a one-issue thing. But I would say in that case, a police officer said to a couple of women, stop dressing provocatively.
You won't get raped.
You won't have to worry about it. So what excuse does he use to children who are sexually assaulted? I mean, that's such a ridiculous thing to say. That I just wish it wasn't called slut walk. That kind of talk, whether the emails, whether it's on MTV, that for something that drives me nuts because it actually takes away from the issue. To even call it that diverts.
Well, but on the other hand, just calling it slut walk draws it to your attention, and you know, if they just called it like Women Rock or something like that, you probably wouldn't pay attention.
Well,
I mean, it's a performance.
As the male on the panel, could I point out one weakness? You know, if you have a bunch of sluts walking down the street calling themselves sluts, and they're holding up signs and they're trying to take back the term, you know, I think the message that a lot of guys might get is, oh, hey, look, there's a bunch of sluts in a parade, and it's not going to be. And it's not going to be, gee, you know, I ought to think more about women's empowerment.
Yeah.
Not that it isn't a perfectly valid message to have, just maybe there's a more effective way to reach men.
There's not, but good try. It's the most effective way to reach men, I promise you. Okay. What would the actual implications be if we remove the tax-free status for churches and religious institutions? Well, a lot of money into the federal coffers, I would guess, first of all. You know, I mean, that's a big business there, churches. And, you know, they're selling an invisible product. I mean, it's a fantastic, business. I mean, you know.
Let me predict the Republican. It would be, you're trying to balance the budget on Jesus' back. And that's anti-American or something. It wouldn't go over well with Republicans.
That's right, because Jesus was a loyal American. We all know that. Is it unpatriotic for large American companies to lobby for a tax holiday that will allow them to repatriate money they've earned overseas? Yeah. Big corporations, in my view, are very unpatriotic. They don't, and you know, some of these companies that are supposedly the ones that are, you know, we all get down on the oil company, you know, they're the bad guys, but you know, Google, which has this reputation as this hippie company, that they're bullshit too. I've read that they could make, if they made their product here in America to China, I think they'd still make 50% profit. I mean, which is what you make when you sell cocaine. Still a very good profit.
Yeah, if we got corporations to actually pay their taxes in America, we wouldn't probably have to talk about lowering the tax rate on the richest Americans.
Right. Yeah. I know, that's a big Republican talking point, is that we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. Yeah, we have the highest rate. We have the lowest, I think, among the 30 biggest industrialized nations of what they pay, of what they actually pay. And Palenti wants to lower it.
But it employs a lot of lawyers, so on the other hand, you balance it out of the employment
that's always
figures.
good. All right, we got to go. Thank you, folks. We'll see you next week. Appreciate you coming by. The internets are the first ones for you, Ray. Do you believe that these benefits of singularity would be shared by humanity as a whole rather than being reserved for the elite? Ooh, good question.
Well, I mean, take mobile phones. Only the wealthy could afford them 20 years ago when they didn't work very well and they did one thing poorly. Now that they do a million things and work pretty well, there are 5 billion of them in the world, and they're pretty inexpensive. So technology
There's
becomes...
5 billion cell phones?
Yeah.
So almost everybody has one.
Everyone will have a smartphone virtually within a few years. And so by the time the technology actually works well, it's very inexpensive. That's because there's a 50% deflation rate when it comes to information technology. Want to buy computation, memory, communication, comes down by 50% every year.
And yet with healthcare, for example, I mean, America, this rich nation that's supposedly leading the world, even though we're 37th, I think, in healthcare, the UN rates us, we certainly can't even make all our people well.
Healthcare,
because
medicine,
of greed.
Medicine is
You're not factoring in greed, Doc.
Medicine is still hit or miss. The new paradigm is to actually reprogram our biology. You and I have outdated software running in our bodies. I'd like to tell...
But people can't get a tooth pulled.
I want to reboot.
Isn't
yeah.
it? But yeah.
I mean, I'd like to tell my fat insulin receptor gene, you don't need to hold on to every calorie. I'm confident the next hunting season at the supermarket will be good. And
right.
That's where we're headed.
We have old software. I heard you say that in your movie, like software from thousands of years ago.
It's not a metaphor. It's a real thing. And that's the new paradigm, to really change the information processes underlying biology. That's going to progress exponentially. Health and medicine we've made progress. As I said before, longevity was 37 in 1800. But it's been progressing linearly because it's been hit or miss.
Yeah. How old are you? You go back to the...
People think I look pretty good for 95.
Yeah, you go way back in time, don't you?
But I'm actually 63. But I do come out younger on biological aging tests.
Because you take all those pills.
Exactly.
What are the pills? Now, I heard you say in the movie that some of these pills can actually reverse the aging process.
Well, I'll give you... aging is not one thing. There's a dozen different processes. I'll give you an example of a simple one. There's a substance, phosphatidylcholine, complicated name, that gets depleted from the cell membrane. That's why the skin is soft and supple in a baby. That is why the skin is rigid and not flexible in an elderly person. The organs don't work very well. You can reverse that.
But it's really great at 29.
It's pretty good at 29, but it's not great at 89 usually. But you can reverse that by supplementing with that substance. So that's one example. And then if you have problems with sugar or cholesterol or homocysteine, there are things you can do to address those. So I actually was diagnosed 30 years ago with type 2 diabetes, but with this program, I've had no indication of diabetes for 25 years.
Yeah, I mean, and everybody could do that.
Yeah.
Diet, yeah, you know that.
Everybody can do that if they have the right ideas and they're diligent about it.
You don't eat meat, do you, Kevin?
No, I don't.
I just wanted to prove that he could not make a joke. All right, does anyone on the panel believe that the economy would be in any better shape if we had a different president? Well, there's a softball right down the plate for the right side of our panel.
Wow. Well, here's one reason that maybe doesn't reflect well on Republicans in a sense. But when you do sort of like psychological experiments and so on and look at sort of how partisans on both sides react to presidents of the other party, people tend to overstate the bad things and understate the good things, right? So when Clinton was president, Republicans were more likely to say the deficit had gone up, even though it had gone down. And then when Reagan was president, Democrats were more likely to say the economy was bad, even when it's good. Now, most businessmen, I mean, this generalization, are Republicans. So you could make an argument that businessmen right now, because a Democrat is president, are understating, are more pessimistic than they should be just because of that partisan bias. So really, we need to elect a Republican in 2012 in order to trick those businessmen into investing in the American economy.
Did you follow that?
How's that?
I actually did. Yeah, I know, and you know what? That's true.
And that's the case for Mitt Romney.
Obama, but Obama's sort of in the same situation because whatever he does, the Republicans do the opposite. It's like whatever he touches has cooties, and
but that's politics.
I've never seen it quite like this.
Wait, I know. I mean, they're putting...
When's the last time your crowd talked about the War Powers Act? I never heard you talk about it in my life.
Right.
All of a sudden
Suddenly
discovered that Libya is a humanitarian thing they don't like, so they're invoking the War Powers Act. Boehner's even saying, I don't really believe in it, but it's my job to do it now. I've never heard any politicians say something like that.
They never met a country they didn't want to bomb.
Wars.
And suddenly...
Oh, no.
Well, they didn't.
No, this is reflective of the The American public is tired of this. They've had a lot of anxiety. We've fought on so many wars. I mean, the president hasn't talked about Libya in a month to the public. It's about time that he talks about it.
Iraq and Afghanistan, Iraq twice now, and Somalia, and Panama, and Grenada, and Lebanon. They just pile on
Actually,
these wars.
Reagan pulled us out of Lebanon.
Love wars.
But remember Newt Gingrich? He was like, Obama needs to bomb Libya yesterday. As soon as Obama started bombing Libya, he's like, what the fuck is this black guy doing? What are we doing? He turned on a dime.
Boehner wanted to abolish the War Powers Act back in the 90s.
Right.
Now he's in love with it.
Well, right, but it's the same thing in the other way. I mean, if you look at what, again, these games, but if you look at what Obama said about the War Powers Act when Bush was president, he was saying, well, you know, clearly the president, they were talking about bombing Iran, and he said, well, clearly the president
can't. Well, that's a little different than Libya.
And the debt ceiling. Obama voted.
Bombing Iran is actually a serious Iran's nuclear.
You guys can't wait to get in and do it.
Obama also.
That's what we all want. We all want more war. No, we don't want more war.
And the record to the two parties recently has been pretty rough on your side on wars. And we got into Iraq, which is an idiot's
war. Saying my side, by the way.
It's an idiot's war.
Well, I mean, I feel like you and I are similar, that we used to be a lot more down the middle, and the Republican Party moved so far to the right that now we look like...
The scariest thing, a guy of limited mental power, George W. Bush, talked this country into it. That's the scariest thing. This wasn't Adolf Hitler. This wasn't Winston Churchill. This was a guy about a little bit below average in ability. And he talked this country into a war. You know, the country that never attacked it.
So you're saying...
I have guys who fought the war, and somehow Iraq attacked us on 9/11.
I just have this dim memory of many leading Democrats voting for...
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah, you're right.
They voted your side.
You're right.
It's an embarrassment that cost a lot of them their careers. I'd say it's horrible, that war.
Right.
Sorry.
And we kind of call out those Democrats.
Yeah, you should call out those Democrats.
Okay, I'm just saying that we don't always close ranks.
I'm just saying
just because they're on the blue team, they're right.
Listen, if you look at the history of American war making, going back through Vietnam, Korea, and all the rest, there's no partisan pattern. The party in power is more likely to start wars because they're in power. Yep. And the party out of power is more likely to oppose them. And that's...
Do you think anybody but George W., with his limited ability, surrounded by the neocons, would have taken us in that war?
Yes.
Do you think Ronald Reagan would have gone into Iraq? No way in the world.
I agree.
No way in the world would Reagan have taken us into that war. It's insane.
Chris, I agree that Reagan probably wouldn't have taken us into that war, but there were a lot of... No, I think the Iraq war was a mistake.
Make a list of high IQ people who would have taken us in that war.
High IQ?
Thank you very much. Thank you, panel. It was a lot of fun. Okay, the questions from the internets. Why do you think the government has decided at this time to tap into our oil reserves? Good question.
Good politics.
You think?
Absolutely. There's no other reason you don't do that when oil's going down.
No, it does not. I saw on the news yesterday what they describe as what would be the criteria for tapping into the oil reserves. It is
happened twice. It's happened twice.
Yeah.
War and national disaster.
Yeah.
Summer vacations.
Yeah.
People getting ready to go away, filling up, pissed off.
Good politics.
Yeah.
Can I go back to how expensive oil is everywhere else but the United States? And now everyone who comes here says, gas is so cheap here.
Right.
Right? It's just one of those things that we complain if it gets over a certain amount. Oh, gas is so high. I hate this country.
What is it in Europe? Like $8-10 now a gallon?
Yeah, it will cost $150 to fill your tank.
Oh, my Lord. Okay, well, you know what? It's not fair to people who are on a budget, but it's not fair to the planet to do it otherwise. If you had a gun to your head and had to vote for a Republican, who would it be? How big a gun? I would get, I guess, John Huntsman, the one who just...
The moderate.
The moderate, you know, the one who made... I love that thing he said about the oncologist. It's such a, you know, of course he was shouted down for it, but, I mean, that's the kind of sensible thinking that I think we used to expect from Republicans. They used to be
but if Obama is so weak, as many people have suggested, it's such a grand opportunity, why aren't all, you know, why isn't there a huge flock of really highly qualified Republican people run.
Well, there's 9 now. I mean, like, it seemed like only a month ago we were saying, where are all the Republicans? And now there's 9, count them 9, who are actually declared. And then my favorites are the 4 who aren't in. I call them the teasers. Palin, Trump, Christie, and Perry. Those 4, I think, would make a much better field than the 9 drones are in there now.
Well, I'm a newsman. That'd be a great group to cover. I mean, you gotta
2
vote
total
the story.
nuts and 2
Trump,
nuts who got elected.
Right.
Talk about a reality TV show.
Right.
7 of the 9 can be nominated, never elected. Huntsman and Romney, I think, are the only 2 who have a shot of being elected.
Pawlenty couldn't get elected?
No.
Did you say elected or arrested?
I said erected.
Now we know where his mind's at.
Anthony Weiner.
Okay. Should we update our Constitution to include health care as an inherent right? Well,
No.
yeah, I don't know why we have to do everything with the Constitution. It just should be.
It is not supposed to be a fungible document. Again and again, the argument that you're going to pick it up and you're going to, it doesn't usually go well when you alter the Constitution.
No, I mean, and you don't have to. You can just make laws.
There you go.
I don't understand, they say Medicare for all. I agree with that. I mean, when you think about it, lots of people basically have health care in this country, government-provided health care. If you're poor, if you're a soldier, if you're old, if you're disabled. But everybody else, it seems like we're discriminating against people who aren't old, poor, disabled, or in the Army. Right. That seems like you could actually make a case that there's a specific group of people, the young, healthy civilians, who are not getting what everybody else in this country is getting.
They could take it to the Supreme Court as a class action.
Yeah, good luck with that. Is it appropriate to ask an elected official if they believe in evolution, or is that none of the public's business? Well, what?
No, you and evolution. This is going to be an all-nighter. I thought this was only a 5-minute thing.
I happen to be pissed off about this issue because they asked the governor of my home state of New Jersey, Chris Christie, this question. And you know what he said? None of your business. None of your business? To a question about evolution? Like that's so private? That's what you say when they ask, did you make a baby with the maid? None of your, really? And he also said something about how they could teach creationism in the schools. I got a pretty good education in my home state of New Jersey. I take this very personally, that this is where New Jersey is going. It's okay if this shit happens in Kansas and Alabama. But don't fuck with the smart states.
Just a sec, though. Why are you hacking on Chris Christie over and over? Is it because he's fat or he's a Republican? Why are you so down on him?
Because of what I just said.
I live in New Jersey.
No, it's because of what I just said. Because I take it very personally that I got, a nice public school education there, and now there is a governor of that state saying things that I never imagined a governor of that state would say. Maybe it's just false pride that I think New Jersey is more sophisticated than other states because I'm from there.
I think it's if it's Kansas, if it's Missouri, no big deal. That's the dance to low sloping foreheads, the middle places, right?
It's okay, it's HBO. It's not TV,
Yeah.
it's HBO.
Did I just say that aloud?
Yes.
Chris Christie.
That's when you know as an interviewer you have lulled your guests into revealing themselves.
Yes,
when they say, did I say that aloud?
Yes. Chris Christie has, I don't agree with this politics, but his ability to execute an agenda and jam it through, he's done a really good job for a big man. He plays well for his...
Well, first of all, jamming through an agenda is only a good quality if it's a good agenda.
Right.
George Bush jammed through an agenda also. I think most progressives would agree, we would love to have that quality in Obama and a lot of Democrats. The ability to jam through an agenda married to good policy.
That's what I'm talking about. He is executing what he wants to do. I'm a reporter, so I'm a moral and ethical eunuch. I don't believe in anything, basically.
Let's keep this guy talking. I really think that we should stay here. I don't know what's in that cup, but all right. We got to go. Thank you very much, folks. You were terrific, as were you. First of all, do you want to respond to that editorial? I could feel you chomping at the bit.
Yeah, next time I'm bringing the earphones for my iPhone, so I don't have to listen to that without being able to respond.
Well, now you can respond.
I forgot we had this internet section, so I tried to pretend I was listening to the music.
Well, I basically was
Okay,
saying,
one thing is, okay, I got the basic idea, 1% of Americans with their private jets, the ones you fly, Bill, because you're such an environmentalist.
Well, I did when we had debates.
Oh, it was just for me.
It was
okay.
just for you.
I don't understand why anyone who isn't part of the 40% of America working for state, local, or federal government would ever vote for the Democratic Party, since that is what the Democratic Party stands for. And as I told you, interrupting your joke, sorry, but I couldn't help myself. It is a fact that every juror on the O.J. case was a Democrat. Everybody blames the blacks. Not me. I blame the Democrats.
Well, all right, let's move on. Black Knight asks, Ann Coulter, are there any Obama policies that you support?
Keeping Guantanamo open, maintaining the Bush tax cuts, although I must say, I think we can come together, the nation and human events here. I would repeal one part of the Bush tax cuts, and that's the part he thought was going to appeal to the New York Times, taking all these people off the tax rolls. No, everybody should pay something. I don't care if you're sending in a can of Spam. You are sending something in, or you have no skin in the game.
I agree.
And that was a big mistake on Bush's part.
Okay. How will we ever wean our country off of war if we continue to glorify it in our national anthem? Wow.
Well, My Country 'Tis of Thee, that's a very nice hymn. I like that one.
That's yours.
Yes, I know. That's why I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has a nice ring to it.
I guess he's talking about Francis Scott Key's glorification of the battle over Fort McHenry, bursting.
Oh, it's War of 1812. Yeah, it's fighting us.
But we needed to fight it, yeah.
Right.
What's so good about I don't have a problem with that one. I mean, we needed to fight that. The British were...
You're pro-1812.
I'm pro-1812. I am so for the War of 1812.
Battle of New Orleans.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, what do you think about Libya and Egypt, as long as I have you here?
What about them?
Are you in favor of us intervening in these two countries that didn't hit us on 9/11 solely for purposes of regime change?
Well, first of all, I didn't think we were intervening in Egypt. Are we?
We did.
What'd we do? What'd we do in Egypt?
No, we didn't.
No, we didn't.
Do you, I mean, intervene or military? I mean, there's a difference.
You mean we talked about it?
We talked about it. Okay. Well, we can talk.
But we didn't send any troops or anything.
Yeah, we
didn't
fly any bombs.
Bombs is something.
We're not dropping bombs
not in Egypt.
No, just Libya.
No bombs in Egypt.
Just Libya.
No bombs. No Egypt bombs. No, just Libya. Libya bombs.
Libya bombs, no Egypt
No
bombs.
Egypt bombs.
Not yet, anyway.
We were threatening to, which is why Mubarak left.
No, we never threatened. No.
No, I think we did. Okay, then Libya, if we're going to keep going over Egypt
Libya.
here.
Well, I mean, Libya we did for humanitarian reasons. It's funny. Let me turn that back on you. When Obama made that speech, he said something that I thought if Ronald Reagan had said it, you would have had an orgasm. He said something about how, some people can turn a blind eye when there's a humanitarian crisis. The United States is different. And I thought, wow. Thank you. That made my nipples hard.
That's because
the United States is different, and we are different, and that's what he was doing, was stopping humanitarian crisis. Now, at this point, obviously, it's a bit of a stalemate.
I mean, the sort of announced reason we were going in was to stop a massacre in Benghazi, the town that they'd surrounded. We've done that, but now it's extremely unclear what the mission of...
But also, it's not a United States-led mission. I mean, for the first time, a United States president said, you know what? Somebody else take over for once. We are a little tired. and I'm looking at you.
Don't blame me. It was Obama who waited too long. That was the problem. So many weeks went past, and then finally, when the bombs did start dropping, Gaddafi was already way underground. He'd already repositioned his troops and his tanks, and now, frankly, I think it's a waste of time.
Really? You don't think there's going to be a good outcome to that?
No, I don't. I don't. And you know, we don't even know who the opposition is. I mean, for all we know, we're bombing the hell out of Gaddafi's troops so we can let Al-Qaeda and or Muslim Brotherhood take over.
My idea is to give Gaddafi Afghanistan. They need a strong man.
You know,
he needs a country.
Yeah. You know, that's genius.
Yes,
That's
because what are we trying to do in Afghanistan? Kill rebels. That's what he wants to do. In light of the recent corporate-friendly Supreme Court decisions, is the U.S. devolving into an oligarchy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
I think it is. I want to plug a book that's not my own. It's a book called Oligarchy. It's by a guy named Jeffrey Winters, who's a political scientist. It's a book-length treatment of oligarchy, and he has a chapter on it in the U.S., and it's extremely persuasive on this point.
And how would we define oligarchy?
Well, he talks about, one of the things he talks about is he looks more at oligarchs and what oligarchs do than oligarchy as a system. And he looks at what he calls the income defense industry, which is the sort of ways in which those who have, you know, the bushel of money you were talking about in that segment guard it from the hands of the state.
Okay. How long do you think it'll be before we have an openly gay president? Oh. What?
Sometimes things change faster than you ever expect.
Exactly.
You know? I mean, if somebody had predicted Obama, that a guy named Obama with a name like that would become president.
Guy wasn't
who
even
knew?
born here. I mean,
so you just never know.
That's right. And look at gay marriage. I mean, like I said, we were talking about it before. Only in 2004, it was a wedge issue the other way.
Right.
It was like fairly unthinkable.
Right. I'm waiting now for the day when a president can kick back in the White House and smoke a joint and be open about it.
By the way, Bill, you said in your at some point
Oh, boy. What did
that
I
Bush
say now?
ran on, I was in the interview with Ethan Edelman.
Ethan Nadelman. Ann Cooter. Yes, what?
You said Bush campaigned on gay marriage.
No, I said
not
Karl
only
Rove.
did he not-
Karl Rove put it on the ballot in key
He
states.
didn't put it on the ballot.
Of course he did.
No, he didn't. And in fact, Bush
They
came
put it-
out in favor of civil unions, which was the identical position to carry in
Right.
2004. However, you know who did campaign against gay marriage? Yes, that's right, Bill Clinton, who signed the Defense of Marriage Act and took out
Which,
ads
the Republican,
in black areas bragging about he
that
signed
is so
the
not
Defense
true.
of Marriage
No,
Act.
the Republicans
That's true.
used that as a wedge issue to get the gays to turn on Clinton. That was
Wait, so you are
completely
denying...
strategic.
I'm sorry, I have to talk to people who we all share the same facts over and over again.
Like
You're
Egypt
denying...
getting bombed by the U.S.
Yeah. He called for Mubarak to leave.
That's not the same as bombing.
Yes.
You're threatening to bomb. You're doing the regime change.
And how many times have I...
Is Mubarak gone? Did he take action for regime change? You guys said you're against regime
I know,
change.
but wait, calling and bombing, like, sometimes I've called you. I've never bombed you.
The crucial
Manifestly, it was being backed up by the threat to bomb. When Obama says Mubarak has got to go when the streets are on fire.
I smell another book, Bombing. How the
And it is a
liberals
fact.
misinterpret that as calling.
And it is a fact that Bill Clinton ran ads in black neighborhoods bragging about signing the Defense of Marriage Act. That is a fact.
That's not why he was in black neighborhoods. All right, we got to go. Thank you very much. We have to do a couple of promos. Should athletes have a right to collectively bargain?
It's got to be you. Come on.
Yes.
Yeah, they do, right? I mean, it's America, right? Thank you.
What we need is
Only
McDonald's
teachers shouldn't.
hamburger flippers having a right to collectively bargain. We need to have union jobs for working people in America, working class people, and those are service industry jobs and restaurant jobs. And if those are the only jobs we have left, we have to make those living wage jobs, and we need a new union movement.
It looked like good news for the NFL today. What about the NBA next year?
I can't even go there. That's the most expensive question I can answer.
Right. Well, we don't want to do that to you,
How
because
expensive?
Lord knows
Very expensive.
you have to eat.
What if those jets might be in jeopardy?
2 of those jets have no catering.
You can tax me on them.
I will.
That's right.
It's up to me.
All right. Should we institute a mandatory war tax when we decide to participate in a military conflict? Yes. What are the panel's thoughts on California bill? Oh, yes, the California bill, I know this, requiring schools to teach the contributions of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender America. Wouldn't it be funny if you answered the sports question and you answered that?
When I read that story, I couldn't help but ask myself how much of that curriculum is going to be speculative. Yeah, in the sense that, you know, how many out people have there been? I mean, is it going to be sort of like, we got a pretty good feeling about Calvin Coolidge? I mean, we can't confirm it, but he had a life outside the Oval Office.
If they don't know what we're talking about, California Pestle had said you have to teach in schools now the contributions of gay Americans. Like when I was a kid, they started to teach the contributions of black Americans. You know, I remember like George Washington Carver.
I mean, that's all anyone remembers.
That's ridiculous.
We've got a real problem in the schools with bullying of LGBT kids. Bullying to death. And they have a program in the United Kingdom where they started teaching the contributions of people they knew to be gay, like Alan Turing, who basically won the Second World War by breaking the Nazi ciphers, and then was hounded to death by the British government as a way of thanking him after the war. He committed suicide.
Right. Well,
when they taught these historical figures who were gay, bullying decreased in these schools.
My parents both fought in World War II. My mother was an Army nurse. He didn't win it all by himself.
It was a big assist. Knowing what
assist.
the Nazis were talking about and where they were going next and what they were doing really was a huge contribution to winning the war. And
I'm not saying it wasn't a contribution. I'm just saying he didn't do it all by himself.
No, it was one gay guy in England.
But
it sounds like, Jen, you think this is a good idea.
It's a great idea. And a lot of people on the right have a problem with acknowledging the existence of gay people where there are children present. They think people will become gay if gay people are acknowledged in the presence.
But think about the process, Dan. I don't disagree, but think about the process, right? At least in Texas, to get new school books in place, they go through this whole process. And you know who runs those committees that put together the curriculums in those books and pick the books? Those far right-wing guys that you hate. And so all you're doing is just adding clusterfuckism to the whole process, you know? And look, you pick the people who contribute and do amazing things, and if they've self-identified, I'm gay, you know, whatever it may be, great. You know, but if you try to make it a rule, all you're doing is adding more bureaucracy, and the people who are controlling the bureaucracy are going to use that as leverage to do what they want to do.
Well, the right-wingers in Texas use their leverage to expunge facts, basically, from history. And liberals can do the same in liberal states to work facts back into the history books, like facts about people who are actually gay or lesbian or bi or trans.
And education just goes out the door.
It's already there, though. I mean, I don't always understand that argument about sort of like, well, you don't want more bureaucracy. I mean, you have to fight the good fight somewhere. And if you're just saying, like, you know, let's not complicate things, let's just keep it stupid. I mean, you know,
you get things done. You don't just create committees. You know, committees.
No, but it's not
got to start somewhere.
It's not creating a new committee. As I understand it, it's just adding a new. I mean, you do have to have
adding
standards
to the curriculum.
In the curriculum, and it's just adding a new one to a curriculum that already exists. A committee that already exists will have one more thing.
It's not like if California refrained from doing this, Texas would stop doing it too. It's not like there'd be detente on the school front.
If it were only that easy, right? If it were only that easy. I mean, you just know that's just not the way it's going to work.
And I could think of, I mean, to your point, I could think of some gay Americans who they could teach about. Eleanor Roosevelt, we know. J. Edgar Hoover.
Sure. Yeah.
We know. Walt Whitman.
Yeah.
So there's 3.
And yeah, that's about it.
Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham
There's a growing body of scholarship that says he might be gay. And if there's nothing wrong with being gay, speculating that he might have been gay is no insult to Mrs. Lincoln, who he wasn't very fond of.
Right. Well, if every guy who was not that fond of his wife was gay, that's a ridiculous standard.
Speculating about people being gay is a very popular pastime in America, and certainly in Hollywood. It happens all the time.
Okay, here's one for the doc. Why do doctors often prescribe pills to their patients rather than diet or lifestyle changes?
Pills make money.
There you go.
Yeah, very often when I've been in a doctor's office, I see that pharmaceutical rep come in. You know, with carrying that suitcase.
And she's always hot.
Always hot.
Shit, right?
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
Or Jake Gyllenhaal in that movie, hot. I would
was
have
gonna
bought
say whatever that.
drugs he was carrying around and love other drugs.
Yes, you're right. Jake Gyllenhaal, hot.
But depending on...
Oh, come on, Bill. You can concede that Jake Gyllenhaal is hot.
Oh, like I haven't noticed.
But also some pills are worth the money. I mean, some pills are going to make you feel a lot better.
Maybe
than
Mr. Lincoln would have liked Mrs. Lincoln a little better, right?
Like what pills are you talking about? Like Valium or something?
Well, any pill that's designed to make you feel better, if you overuse it's going to really make you feel better. So, I mean, I don't know from current experience.
But, you know, I mean, I started to talk to you about this out front there before about Bill Clinton, and I was kind of making a joke about blood flow to the penis. But when people have a bad diet, that's when they need the Viagra, right, Doc?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's absolutely true.
Age has nothing to do with it. I thought.
You know what I think?
No, it's really true. If we were eating right, we wouldn't need to be selling Cialis and all this, that Viagra and stuff like that.
But you're 77. You don't need it, right?
No.
All right, Doc. High five. All right, we got to go. Thank you. We'll see you next week. All right.